Hey guys, tonight we're doing something a little different. You're not in your bed tonight, not in your room, not even in your own century. Tonight, you're curling up on the cold stone floor of a medieval church. Yes, inside the church, somewhere deep in the English countryside. The doors groan shut behind you. Outside, the wind howls like a choir of wolves. Inside, there's only the low flicker of candles and the lingering scent of old incense clinging to the walls like cobwebs. You might think a church is peaceful at night, but you'd be wrong. You're about to find out what it's like to sleep in a place where miracles were begged for, ghosts may still whisper, and the pews remember every secret ever confessed. You sure you want to do this? Because I'm not saying it's haunted, but you probably wouldn't last till morning. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and time zone in the comments. I want to know who's listening and where you're tuning in from tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step inside. The heavy wooden door creaks closed behind you, clicking shut with a sound that echoes off the nave. There's no handle on the inside. Churches weren't built for overnight guests. But tonight, just like hundreds before you, you'll find a spot in the shadows, stretch out on the stone floor, and hope that the Lord is feeling merciful. Maybe you fled the storm. Maybe you're broke. Maybe the local inn is already full of drunk merchants. In the Middle Ages, sleeping inside churches wasn't exactly legal, but it wasn't uncommon either. It was tolerated, mostly, especially for pilgrims or the desperate. You move slowly between the pews, their old wood polished by centuries of weary hands and guilty prayers. The air is cold, very cold. The kind that sinks into your bones, the kind that makes your nose ache and your teeth clench. You lie down anyway, wrapping your cloak around you. The wind still moans through the cracks in the stained glass. Somewhere above, something screeches. Maybe an owl, maybe something else. Then, you hear footsteps. Not yours, not close, not human. Just soft, deliberate tapping, like someone pacing across the stone. You open your eyes. Nothing, but the sound keeps going. Steady, measured. Historians still debate whether medieval churches truly allowed strangers to sleep inside at night. In some areas, monks locked the doors. In others, especially along pilgrimage routes, churches doubled as sanctuaries. And you, a traveler, are about to relive that strange in-between world. Part guest, part trespasser. You settle near the center of the nave, away from the altar and the flickering red sanctuary lamp. Above you, a statue of the Virgin Mary looks down, smiling faintly in the shadows. You can't tell if it's comforting or watching. The smell is unique. Melted wax, ancient wood, dusty dried flowers left on Saint's Day weeks ago, and under all that, the faint, sour trace of people, of lives, of breath and sorrow and sleep. It's like the memories have soaked into the walls. You shift. Your back already hurts. The cloak isn't thick enough. You hear something creak overhead. Maybe a beam, a rat, or something worse. You tug your hood lower, whispering to yourself that it's all fine, just acoustics. But then comes a different sound. Whispering, not loud, not clear, just there, like wind through reeds, like someone murmuring a prayer just out of reach. Libera me, Domine. You don't speak Latin, but you've heard those words before. Deliver me, O Lord. The kind of phrase they chant at funeral masses. Could just be a monk praying, could be something else. You open your eyes again, resisting the urge to bolt upright. Nothing's changed. Your body stays still, but your mind is racing. Other people have heard these things too. A 14th century record mentions a traveler sleeping in a church who heard barefoot footsteps circling him all night. Another claimed to see candles light themselves. Some never woke up at all. Your eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from something else. Like the floor beneath you is pulling you down. Like the air itself is sedating you. You remember someone once said, "Sleeping in a church isn't rest. It's trial by soul." A joke flashes through your head. Yeah. Then I'd rather take the soul exam after a nap. But you don't laugh. Beside you, a gust of wind slithers under the door. One candle flickers and dies. In the sudden dark, you feel eyes on you. When you blink again, everything is still, and you think, maybe I'll get used to it. Maybe, maybe not. You're not alone. You thought you'd be. After all, who else would willingly bed down inside a medieval church with its cold slabs of stone and its long, echoing silences? But as your eyes adjust to the dim flicker of candlelight, you notice it. The bundle of rags tucked behind a pillar, the subtle rise and fall of someone breathing. Then another figure near the transept, curled under a patched woolen cloak, and another by the font. At least 5 others, silent, motionless, like shadows who forgot to leave when the sun went down. They're pilgrims or beggars, maybe even penitents. This church, it seems, has become something more than a place of worship. It's a sanctuary, yes, but also a shelter. You pull your cloak tighter. The air smells of sweat and old fabric now, laced with that ever-present tang of incense and dust. Someone coughs. Another mutters in their sleep. You lie still, pretending you don't notice the tiny mouse skittering along the edge of the altar rail. It doesn't bother you. You've slept in worse places. An overcrowded cart in winter. A hayloft above a pig pen. That one time you tried napping near a blacksmith's forge and woke up thinking you were being slow roasted. Compared to all that, this should be peaceful. And it is. Almost. Except for the sound. There's a rhythm to the night inside a church. It's not quiet. Not truly. The wind hums through stained glass windows, flickering between cracks in the stone. The rafters creak as if the church itself is sighing. You can hear your neighbors breathing, some snoring lightly, some whispering prayers. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls. Once, then again, 3 times. Midnight mass, or just the church's internal clock keeping time long after the world outside stopped caring. You don't know. Historians still debate the role of churches as shelter spaces in the medieval world. Some argue they were closed and guarded at night, reserved only for clergy and sacraments. Others point to records, letters, court cases, travelers' notes that hint at churches being havens in the cold, open to those with no other roof. The truth? Likely both. In 1312, a scribe recorded that vagrants and pilgrims did oft lie along the nave at night, seeking warmth, if not welcome. It wasn't hospitality. It was tolerance, conditional, fragile. Sleep here, yes, but don't be seen. Don't speak. Don't sin. And never cross the chancel rail, because that's God's space. Your space is here, on the cold, cracked floor under a thin layer of dust and judgment. You shift again, trying to find a position that doesn't feel like you're sleeping on a pile of bones. A few feet away, a woman in a heavy linen dress snores softly, her arm curled around a satchel. You wonder what she's carrying. Maybe a relic, maybe her entire life. Suddenly, the man near the front of the church stirs. He rises, just a little, sits up on his haunches. He's thin, hunched, wearing a patchwork of robes that don't belong to the same person, let alone the same decade. He doesn't say anything, just watches. You turn away. You don't want to make eye contact. Churches might be sacred, but people are still people. There were rules, you know. In some towns, church custodians patrolled with lanterns to catch those who tried to steal, or worse, sleep too close to the altar. In York, a 15th century decree fined any commoner who dared loiter upon the sanctuary stones beyond Vespers. And in Avignon, a monk famously chased a group of drunkards out with a censer. But enforcement was inconsistent, especially in winter. A candle gutters out near the apse, and the shadows shift again. The man who was watching you lies back down. The woman continues to snore. Someone else mumbles a phrase that might be Latin or just dream speak. You can't tell anymore. The lines between sacred and human, between holy silence and ordinary night, have blurred. You think about how strange this all is. Sleeping in a church, a real one. Not just visiting, not for a service, but lying down on the stones with your head resting against the base of a column carved 6 centuries ago. Above you, saints in stained glass still stare, their colors muted by moonlight. You close your eyes and think, this is absurd, this is uncomfortable, this is history. And then something funny happens. You feel safe. Not warm, not cozy, not welcome, but safe. The way a child might feel sleeping under a heavy table during a thunderstorm, still aware of danger, but somehow protected by the weight of something old and solid. The church doesn't feel empty anymore. It feels occupied, not just by people, but by memories, echoes, prayers whispered long after the mouth that spoke them turned to dust, footsteps layered like old ink under fresh parchment. You drift a little, not quite asleep, not fully awake. And just as your breathing slows, you hear a voice, a child's voice. You open your eyes, but no one is speaking. Of course not. The snoring starts quietly. At first, it blends in with the rustling of robes and the shifting of tired bodies. But then it grows, a low, gravelly rumble echoing off the stone walls like a distant war drum. It belongs to the man lying near the 4th column on the right. You noticed him earlier, heavy-set, arms folded, head tilted back against the pillar like he's claiming it as a headboard. You try to ignore it. Everyone else does too, for now. But soon, it's impossible not to hear. Especially when it starts bouncing off the arches, harmonizing awkwardly with the soft Gregorian chant wafting in from the choir stalls. That's right, there's still a service going on. Not for you, of course. You're down here on the floor, among the low-born and weary. But up in the chancel, behind the gilded rood screen, a group of monks is murmuring lauds, the midnight office. They've been chanting for over an hour now. It's beautiful, haunting even. But it's also being drowned out by one man's extremely medieval nasal obstruction. You glance toward the choir, as if the monks might notice. Surely they can hear it too. And yet they continue, undisturbed, voices rising and falling like waves. Trained patience, maybe, or selective hearing developed from years of living in shared silence. Still, someone stirs near you. A woman in a brown cloak rolls over, muttering something sharp under her breath. Another sleeper kicks at the snorer's boot. No reaction. He snores louder. It almost sounds triumphant. Sleeping in churches during active services was technically forbidden, but it happened, often, not just by accident either. Some people intentionally came in during nighttime prayers to sneak a nap in the back pews. Warm candles, steady droning chants, and high vaulted ceilings that echoed like lullabies. It was the medieval version of a white noise machine. Still, not everyone was thrilled about it. A 13th century abbot once wrote that the sanctuary has become a dormitory for the slothful, where their mouths are shut in slumber while the Lord's word is spoken aloud. Bit dramatic, but you get the point. There's even a recorded incident in 1442 in which a friar stopped mid-sermon to slap a sleeping merchant across the face with a psalter. The merchant claimed he was meditating. The friar claimed he was snoring like a donkey. No one won. You chuckle quietly at that thought. Maybe this guy, your current snoring neighbor, would have met a similar fate. But the monks here seem more forgiving, or just tired. You can't blame them. The chant continues, "Et ne nos inducas in tentationem," and lead us not into temptation. You wonder how many nights they've done this. Hundreds, thousands. Did they ever fall asleep mid-verse? Did their voices falter from fatigue? Did any of them ever secretly envy the sleepers on the floor, wrapped in scratchy wool, snoring without a care while they stood barefoot on cold stone, singing to a dark ceiling? Maybe. You shift your position again, wincing at the pressure on your hip bone. The floor is unyielding, even through layers of cloth. You can feel every bump, every tiny chip in the stone. No mattress, no feather pillow, just your folded arm and whatever part of you hasn't gone numb yet. A moment later, the snoring stops. Abruptly, you glance over. The man is still. Maybe he's turned his head. Maybe someone finally elbowed him hard enough. The church feels quieter again, more reverent, almost solemn. And then, just as the monks reach the final Amen, he lets out the loudest, longest, most operatic snort you've ever heard. It echoes off the ceiling. The woman in the brown cloak actually sits up. Someone groans. Someone else whispers, "Blessed Virgin, make it stop." And yet, no one moves to wake him. Because here, even disruption has a place. Even snoring becomes part of the rhythm. Historians still argue about how tolerated this behavior really was. Some say the clergy turned a blind eye out of pity. Others claim strict rules were enforced, and those who disrespected the sacred soundscape were kicked out immediately. The truth, like everything medieval, sits somewhere in the middle, half canon law, half shrug. You lie back down, folding your cloak over your ears as best you can. The candles are lower now. The service has ended. A few monks drift silently through the nave, eyes soft, feet quiet. They don't look at you. They don't scold. They pass like mist, habitual, half asleep themselves. And the snorer, he stirs, opens one eye, smacks his lips, rolls over, and starts again. You smile, despite yourself. Because this is it. This is what it was like, sleeping among the holy and the exhausted, the sacred and the absurd. And maybe that's what the medieval church really was at night. A cathedral of contradictions, a place where heaven met halitosis, where choirs and snores sang together, where God watched you dream and maybe chuckled a little too. You're dreaming. At least you think you are. Because the stone beneath you has softened. The cold has faded, and somewhere far above, the ceiling of the church has dissolved into a sky of gold and blue, bright as midday, but without a sun. You're floating, almost, but not weightless. You feel watched, not judged, not threatened, just seen. Someone whispers your name. You turn. No one's there. You sit up, only you're still lying down. Your hands are folded on your chest like you've been posed, and you're not sure you're breathing anymore. You hear bells, soft and distant, tolling in some pattern that doesn't match any you know, and voices chanting, not Latin, not English, not anything you can recognize, but you understand them anyway, or think you do. And then, darkness. The dream ends like a candle being pinched out. You jolt awake with a gasp, like you've been underwater. The chill returns. The stone floor is back. The ceiling is where it should be, high above you, ribbed and vast. The others are still sleeping. No one is whispering. No one is looking. You're alone again. But the dream lingers, not just as a memory, but like a residue on your skin. Something heavy pressing behind your eyes. Not fear, not confusion, something else entirely. In the Middle Ages, dreams in churches were taken very seriously, especially dreams that happened near relics, altars, or during sacred hours of the night. If someone dreamed in the presence of a saint's bones or under the gaze of a holy statue, it could be interpreted as a message from heaven or something darker. There were stories, dozens of them. A blind woman dreamed of light while lying near the tomb of St. Edmund and claimed to wake with sight restored. A soldier, after sleeping near a cathedral's font, dreamed of burning and confessed a secret crime the next day. Others weren't so lucky. A farmer once claimed he dreamt of being dragged by angels, only to die 3 days later, choking on a fish bone. Coincidence? Maybe. Or divine scheduling. You sit up right now, unable to shake the feeling that your dream meant something. And you're not alone in that. The woman sleeping near the font stirs. She too sits up slowly, blinking, looking dazed. She crosses herself twice and whispers something quickly under her breath. A prayer, a word, a thank you. You can't tell. She's not the only one. Around you, more sleepers begin to shift, not fully waking, just turning, murmuring, restless. A man near the side chapel mutters a phrase over and over. You lean in, trying to hear. Non sum dignus. I am not worthy. It's like the dreams are moving through the room. Not contagious, exactly, but collective. Tied to this place. This hour. Historians still debate whether this phenomenon was religious experience or social myth. Was it the environment, the exhaustion, the incense perhaps slightly hallucinogenic after hours of exposure? Or was it belief itself, a deep, shared expectation that the sacred would seep into sleep? Churches were layered places, spiritually and architecturally. High above, angels, saints, painted ceilings. Around you, stone, arches, carved warnings. Beneath you, bones, graves, forgotten sinners. You are literally sleeping between heaven and hell. No wonder the dreams felt charged. And it wasn't just visions. Some reported feeling things during their church sleep. Warmth on the chest, a hand stroking their brow, the sense of being lifted by something with no body. Others felt fear, paralysis, breath on their neck from something unseen. You yourself feel a prickling now. Not a dream, not quite awake. That moment of in-between, when you're not sure if your body has moved or your mind just thinks it has. You look to the apse. A candle flares, nothing more. Still, you wonder. If someone or something was trying to speak to you, would you listen? Would you know how? A church at night can be many things. A shelter, a trap, a passage, a place to rest, or a place to be found. You lie back down, heart still beating a little faster than you'd like. You close your eyes. Not because you trust the night, but because, whatever happens next, you want to remember it. You're not asleep. Not really, but not fully awake either. Your body has accepted the floor, more or less. Your hip bones have stopped complaining and the pain in your shoulder has dulled to a throb. You're not comfortable exactly, but you've reached that medieval version of peace. Not shivering too hard and not thinking about the fleas. Because yes, there are probably fleas. The wool cloak you're wrapped in? It's seen things, pilgrimages, rainstorms, one suspiciously sticky tavern floor. It smells like wet goat and faint regret. But in this cold, you'd hug a skunk if it had body heat. Around you, the church breathes. Not in the literal sense, thankfully, but in that strange way ancient buildings do. Walls shift, wood creaks, the rafters above give soft, periodic sighs like a sleeping giant. Somewhere to your right, the drip of water leaks from a crack in the ceiling. You count the seconds between drops just to stay grounded. The stone beneath you is unforgiving. It has no sympathy, but it does have history. You're lying on the same floor where centuries of knees bent in penance, where sandals scraped during processions, where the dead were once carried in, wrapped in linen and prayers. You try not to think about that too much. Instead, you focus on the smells. They're everywhere now, thick and mingled. The must of old incense, still clinging to the stones, decades after the last big feast day. The burnt beeswax from candles guttering low in their holders. A metallic tang, maybe from the iron candlesticks, maybe from something less pleasant. And underneath it all, humans, unwashed, exhausted, real. Medieval churches didn't smell like holiness. They smelled like people. Dust and dirt, wet cloaks, cracked leather, the occasional burst of something stronger, wine breath, open wounds, rotten teeth. And yes, the church kept going anyway. Historians still argue about how these sensory experiences shaped faith. Did the constant discomfort deepen devotion? Was the scent of sweat and sanctity intertwined? Or did people simply get used to it the way we learn to sleep through traffic or live next to a train? In a 14th century diary from Ghent, a novice monk described his first winter in a monastery. The air hung thick with wax and wool, and the stones bit through my spine. But by the third week, I could smell the shape of morning before the bells even rang. You like that? Smelling the shape of morning. It sounds poetic, until you realize it probably meant someone nearby coughed themselves awake again. You shift your weight. The stone shifts nothing in return. To pass the time, you start naming things around you. One candle stub in a rusted iron holder. 2 stained glass windows, unlit now, but you can just make out the silhouette of Saint Michael in one. Sword raised like he's ready to duel the moon. 3 fellow sleepers within reach. The woman by the font, the snorer, and the man who hasn't moved in hours. You hope he's just a very deep sleeper. You try to remember how many hours till dawn. But time here isn't measured in hours. It's measured in candles. And the candles are low. Your breath fogs faintly in the air. That means it's below 10 degrees Celsius. Maybe 5. You pull your cloak tighter and wish, absurdly, for a hot water bottle, or a radiator, or just a cat. Medieval people kept animals in their houses for warmth. Dogs, chickens, even goats. You would welcome a goat right now, a snuggly, judgmental goat. But alas, no livestock allowed in the nave. Church rules. The woman by the font shifts in her sleep, pulling her shawl up over her face. The man beside her curls tighter like he's trying to disappear into his own chest. You wonder what they're dreaming. Are they cold in their dreams too? Someone sneezes. A wet, messy one. No one says, "Bless you." You suppose in here the blessing is implied. You stare up at the ceiling, barely visible in the candlelight. The ribs of the vault crisscross above like the bones of some great stone beast. They're beautiful. You've never noticed ceilings like this before, not in daylight, not with other tourists around, but here at night, from the floor, freezing and half asleep. The ceiling feels alive, heavy, ancient, patient, like it's watching you, waiting. And yet there's comfort in that. Because if this church has watched thousands sleep before you, pilgrims, monks, beggars, fugitives, then you're not the first to feel this ache, or this loneliness, or this strange aching peace. You press your hand to the stone beneath you. It doesn't warm you, but it grounds you. And for the first time all night, you feel safe enough to close your eyes again. It occurs to you, somewhere between your third shift on the cold floor and your fifth deep sigh, that you're exhausted, but someone in this building has been awake the entire time. Someone is always awake here. That's when the question creeps in. Do monks ever sleep? You're lying in the nave, wrapped like a burrito in wool and discomfort, while behind the choir screen, voices continue to murmur. Not singing this time, not chanting, just soft movement, the scuff of sandals, the rustle of robes, the occasional clink of a brass lamp being trimmed or carried. You glance toward the high altar. Faint candlelight flickers through the stone lattice work, like distant lightning trapped in a box. You imagine the monks there, pale, blinking in the dim glow, moving like ghosts between prayers. It's past midnight, and still they're awake. Because in this world, their world, sleep comes second to God. You remember something you read, or maybe heard, or dreamed. Monks in the Middle Ages didn't sleep like you do. Not in one long, blissful stretch. Their sleep was interrupted, scheduled, sacrificial. Historians still puzzle over how monastic communities managed their bizarre sleep routines. The rule of Saint Benedict, essential reading for any self-respecting medieval monk, laid out a daily rhythm that included 8 prayers every single day. That meant waking at awkward hours, like 2 a.m. or 5 a.m., to chant psalms in the dark while the rest of the world snored. Some orders went even further. The Cistercians, known for their hardcore discipline, would sleep fully clothed, belt, shoes and all, just in case they were summoned suddenly. The Carthusians, they slept in shifts, often on bare boards, and rose every night to pray until sunrise. Imagine that. Every night you close your eyes, only to be woken by a bell, summoned to shuffle into a cold chapel and mumble Latin for 90 minutes. Then back to bed. Rinse and repeat until death. You'd think it would break a person. And yet somehow they saw this as divine order. To give up dreams in exchange for discipline. To trade warmth for ritual. To live in cycles, not sleep. You lie there now, listening more closely. Someone is whispering a psalm, half sung under their breath. In noctibus extolite manus vestras. Lift up your hands in the night. You wonder if he's been awake since Compline, or if this is the second or third time he's risen tonight. You wonder if he's tired, if he ever dreams. It's strange, isn't it? You came here to sleep. They came here to stay awake. And yet here you all are, together, beneath the same roof, breathing the same cold air, walking the same tightrope between devotion and delirium. Maybe that's what this building really is. Not a church, not a shelter, but a machine. A machine for sanctified exhaustion. A place where sleep becomes spiritual currency, where staying awake becomes a kind of offering. You shift again. Your shoulder protests. How long have you been lying here? An hour? 4? Your sense of time is melting like candle wax. Above you, you swear you hear the monks begin another round of chanting. Again? Yes, again. Because somewhere, in the folds of the rule, it's time. It's always time. No matter the hour, no matter the body, you try to imagine being them. Rising with the bell, splashing your face in ice-cold water from a stone basin, donning the same scratchy robe, shuffling silently to the choir stalls, singing to the dark, not to be heard, but simply because it must be done, and then returning to your cell for maybe a few more hours of sleep before the next bell. You wonder if monks ever resented the schedule, if anyone ever muttered 5 more minutes in Latin, or if the rhythm simply became them. The idea of choosing this life is baffling to you, especially now with your joints aching and your mind foggy and your blanket feeling more like a damp rag than a comfort. But perhaps that's the point. You didn't choose this. They did. You're just visiting this strange rhythm. They live inside it. And as you lie there, barely awake, you realize something simple and strange. They're not losing sleep. They're giving it away. You keep your eyes closed, not because you're tired, though you are, but because something's shifting, not in you, in the building. You're lying still, every inch of you chilled, wrapped in that itchy, borrowed cloak, when you begin to notice that the church itself is awake, not in a haunted house kind of way, not with creaks and slamming doors and screams in the night. Number, this is subtler, stranger, quieter. The building is breathing. Not literally, of course. But every few minutes there's a long exhale through the rafters, a sigh in the mortar, a deep groan in the beams overhead that sounds just a little too rhythmic to be coincidence. The columns don't move, but they feel tense, like muscles holding up centuries. The floor under your cheek is firm but alive, humming with energy. Every stone was cut by hand, carried on backs, set in place by men who probably slept just as poorly as you are now. It feels like memory, as if the church doesn't contain history. It remembers it. You open your eyes just a crack. Nothing's changed. Still that same vaulted ceiling. Still the same distant flicker of candlelight. Still that same damp smell of wax, wool, and worship. And yet, you feel like the church is watching you back. Historians still debate whether medieval people believed buildings could be sacred in themselves, or only through what happened inside them. But you're starting to understand why the distinction may not have mattered. Churches weren't just buildings, they were bodies. Bones in the beams, lungs in the halls, a great stone ribcage echoing with every whisper of faith. You sit up slowly, careful not to disturb the woman sleeping a few feet away. She's curled like a question mark, her face buried in her scarf. Her breathing is soft, rhythmic. But above her, a carved angel stares down from a column capital. It's hard to tell in the dark, but its eyes seem deeper now, like it knows something, like it's waiting for you to notice. You blink, gone. Just stone again. Still, you're not the only one noticing things. At the far end of the nave, the snoring has stopped, not paused, stopped. You wait. 5 seconds. 10. No sound, no rustle. The man isn't sitting up, isn't moving. You tell yourself he's just sleeping differently now, that maybe, finally, his body gave in and let him rest. But something about the stillness seems too still. You look away. Instead, you focus on the architecture, because it helps. It grounds you. The walls rise like cliffs. The windows, now black and opaque, cut tall and narrow shapes into the night. The pillars march in perfect ancient order down the nave like guards who never sleep. You realize something. This place was built to last longer than you. longer than your children, longer than the kings and queens it once hosted. It was built with eternity in mind, not comfort, not warmth, but permanence. A place where the divine could echo for centuries without ever needing to speak loudly. You try to imagine it under construction. Mud and carts, dust and ropes, hammers tapping in rhythm, the smell of sweat and lime, the voices of builders singing songs they'd never hear inside the finished walls. It would have taken decades, lifetimes. Some who laid the foundation would have died before the first bell ever rang. And yet here it is, still standing, still holding you, like a stone lullaby wrapped around your shaking bones. You lean back again, resting your head on your rolled cloak. The sighing in the rafters continues. It's just wind, you tell yourself. Just physics, just echoes. But deep down, you wonder, if this place has soaked up every prayer, every cry, every hymn, every midnight confession, has it become more than stone? Does it know you're here? Does it care? You don't expect an answer, but the candle nearest you flares for a moment, just long enough to make the carved face of a saint seem to smile. Then darkness again. You hear it before you see it. A footstep, software bare. Then another. Too deliberate to be the building, too light to be one of the monks, too close. You don't move, you barely breathe. Because in a church like this, in the dead middle of the night, footsteps that don't belong to you are never good news. You open your eyes, just a sliver. The candlelight is still dim. Nothing looks different. The pews are quiet. The woman by the font hasn't stirred. The snorer, miraculously, has resumed his wood-sawing symphony, but there's something standing between the pillars, a shape, not tall, not small, just there. You blink again. Gone. You sit up, slowly, quietly. You tell yourself it was your imagination, your mind playing tricks on you, fueled by cold and sleep deprivation and maybe a little leftover dream from earlier. But your heart's thumping now. Not in terror, exactly, but in recognition. Because everyone who's ever slept inside an old church has a story. Historians still record them, unwillingly, often footnoted as folklore or popular superstition. But the stories persist. In a monastery outside Bruges, monks claim to hear the sound of a child crying from under the altar at the same hour each night. In northern Italy, pilgrims reported waking with strange bruises after sleeping near certain shrines. In England, a church warden once found muddy footprints circling the nave. Footprints that started and ended at a sealed tomb. And here, now, in this church, you hear another footstep. Closer, you turn your head, still nothing. Your brain is begging for logic, drafts, shifting wood, someone moving in their sleep. But you know what you heard. It's a strange thing. Fear in a sacred space. You expect to feel safe, protected, and yet the silence becomes menacing. The candlelight begins to flicker not softly, but like it's being toyed with. Every carved face in the stone, once benign, almost comical, seems suddenly more alert. You try to think, what would a medieval sleeper do? They believed in spirits. Not just ghosts of the dead, but wandering souls. Restless ones, lost ones, sometimes holy, sometimes not. But in a church, spirits were expected. Sometimes they were even invited. There was a practice called vigil keeping. People would sleep overnight in churches, not to rest, but to receive visions, or penance, or to meet something, a saint, a message, a presence. They'd lie right where you are now, beneath the great crucifix, with nothing but their breath and their sins to keep them company. And often, they heard things. So maybe this is just tradition. You're not being haunted. You're being included. You exhale slowly, trying to settle your heartbeat. If it's a ghost, you reason, it hasn't touched you, hasn't spoken, hasn't done anything but walk. But then, a whisper, software, so soft you almost miss it, right behind you. Av, you sit bolt upright. No one is there. The pews are empty. The altar is distant and silent. Even the monks seem to have vanished behind their veil of stone and song. You're alone, except you aren't. The whisper repeats, closer this time. Not a threat, not a curse, just one word. Ave, hail, a greeting. You remember something, a passage, a 12th century mystic once wrote. Some spirits walk the nave not in sorrow, but in service, to comfort the fearful, to watch the faithful, to keep company with the lonely. You wonder if that's what this is. Not a haunting, a visitation. Your pulse slows a little. You lie back down, not because you feel braver, but because you're too tired to argue with the supernatural. And if the spirit wants to share the space, it can have the left side. You close your eyes, and as you begin to drift off again, you swear. You feel someone lie beside you. No weight, no breath, just presence. And somehow, for the first time tonight, the floor doesn't feel cold, it feels shared. You wake with a start, unsure whether you actually slept or just hovered in some in-between state where time bends and logic softens. It's darker now. The last of the candles has died. You can smell it, burnt wick, melted wax, that slight, acrid puff of smoke that always comes with the end of a flame. The church has returned to shadow. The moon offers a faint glow through the stained glass, but it's fractured. Red, blue, green, gold. The saints now wear masks of color, flickering across the walls like slow ghosts. You feel different, heavier maybe, or more aware. Something's shifted inside you and under you, because as you reach to adjust your aching back, your hand brushes against a lump in the floor. Hard, small, cool. You move the edge of your cloak and feel again. It's a stone, but not just any stone. It's carved, rounded, inscribed, a name. You're sleeping on a tomb. Of course you are. It shouldn't surprise you. Medieval churches were never just places of prayer. They were burial grounds, not just for the wealthy and holy, but sometimes for anyone lucky or unlucky enough to be buried beneath the sacred arches. You've been sleeping with bones beneath you all night. You sit up and look around, trying to make out more of the floor. Sure enough, barely visible in the moonlight, there are engraved slabs everywhere. Some smoothed by centuries of footsteps. Some chipped and cracked. Some with names, some just with crosses. You are, quite literally, resting on the dead. And you're not the first. Historians have documented thousands of tomb slabs built into church floors across Europe, not hidden in crypts or tucked away in secret chapels, right there where people walked, knelt, and yes, sometimes slept. It wasn't seen as disrespectful. In fact, it was considered a kind of blessing. To lie above the bones of a saint or even a virtuous soul meant that their holiness might reach you in your sleep. There are records from the 1300s describing women laying their feverish children on the stone graves of martyrs in hopes of healing. Pilgrims would deliberately seek out churches where saints were buried to spend the night, not just to be closer to God, but to absorb something sacred by osmosis. And there's even a letter from a French monk who slept on the grave of his predecessor every Thursday for 10 years, hoping to inherit his wisdom. You lie back down and place your palm on the tombstone beside you. The name is too worn to read, but you whisper something anyway. A thank you, a request, or maybe just an apology. Because if someone is listening, they deserve at least that much. The woman near the font stirs. She's awake now, too. You see her sitting up, looking at the floor in the same way you just did. She touches something, crosses herself, then lies back down. You wonder if she's realized she's on a tomb too, or if she already knew, and chose it. You lie still, thinking of what might lie beneath you. A merchant? A monk? A child? A forgotten noblewoman whose family paid dearly for the honor of this eternal real estate. It doesn't feel eerie now. It feels intimate. You're closer to history here than you've ever been. Closer to death. Closer to faith. Because in this world, this medieval world you've wandered into for the night, life and death are not opposite ends. They're roommates. They share ceilings and candlelight and stone. And maybe, if you believe the old stories, they even share dreams. You close your eyes again, this time willingly. And just before sleep takes you, a strange thought crosses your mind. What if the person buried beneath you is dreaming too? You wake up feeling watched, not in the usual, uncomfortable way, like someone standing too close on a subway, but a quieter kind of awareness, a presence that isn't trying to hide, more like you're being observed, patiently, from a distance. You sit up slowly. Your neck is stiff. Your limbs ache. But you can move. You blink into the dimness. The moonlight has shifted, and with it, the shadows on the walls. What you thought were just decorative alcoves are now illuminated, faintly, revealing something you hadn't noticed before. Eyes, dozens of them. Not real, of course, but carved, painted, cast in stained glass. Saints, angels, apostles, all of them watching, silent, still. But there's something about them now in this hour that wasn't there before. Their faces look more alert, as if they've been waiting for you to notice them. Saint Barbara, sword in hand, stands above a pillar like she's guarding the nave. Saint Sebastian, riddled with arrows but still serene, gazes outward from a fresco half faded with age. Saint Lucy, her painted eyes held on a silver platter, stares directly at the altar, never blinking. You're surrounded, not by people, not by monks, not even by ghosts, but by witnesses. You shift uncomfortably under their gaze, not because they accuse you, but because they know more than you do. Medieval people believed that saints could see you, literally. Churches weren't just places to worship God. They were filled with other watchers, a whole audience of holy figures, each with their own specialties, tempers, and preferred offerings. And their images, they weren't just symbolic, they were active. Windows, some said. Portals, others whispered. You remember reading once about a 14th century woman who confessed her sins directly to a wooden statue of Saint Margaret, because she said his eyes were softer than the priest's. In fact, many churches kept certain icons behind veils, only revealed on holy days, because the sight of them was considered too powerful to witness daily, or too unsettling. There's a record from the cathedral at Chartres of parishioners refusing to sleep within view of a particular statue of the Virgin. She watches, they said, even when your eyes are closed. You look up now at one of the nearest figures, a stone-carved saint tucked high in an alcove. You hadn't noticed him before. He's wearing the robes of a bishop, one hand raised in blessing, the other holding a crooked staff. His face is stern, but not unkind. You try to look away, but his eyes, blank and weather-worn, seem to pull at your gaze. You wonder, if he could see into your dreams, what would he find? Regret? Exhaustion? A strange modern heart trying to make sense of medieval silence? Maybe he's not judging. Maybe he's just remembering. Because saints in these walls were more than statues. They were companions, mentors, sometimes even guardians of the night. There's a belief, rare now, but once common, that if you slept beneath the watchful eyes of a saint, you might wake with answers. Clarity, even healing. Pilgrims would leave tokens near their favorite figures. Bits of cloth, coins, teeth, lockets of hair. Not gifts exactly, but promises. An exchange. Watch me while I sleep and I'll carry your memory when I leave. You have nothing to offer, but you whisper anyway. Just a soft thank you to the stone face above you. You're not sure if he hears, but you feel warmer somehow. Not safe, not completely, but witnessed. And in this old, strange world of midnight prayers, flickering light and soft stone sighs, being seen might be enough. You lie back down, and this time, when you close your eyes, you let the saints keep watch, because maybe tonight, that's their job. You're dreaming again. This time it starts with bells. Not the gentle kind, not the distant musical chimes that mark the hour or welcome a wedding. These are sudden, sharp, urgent, and they don't belong to any clock. They toll once. A deep, metallic boom that cuts straight through your chest. Then again. Then a third time. You sit up before your mind is even fully awake. Because here, in this place, bells mean something. Always. Maybe it's time for a service. Maybe someone has died. Maybe something older than either has stirred. You blink into the darkness. No light, no movement. Just the memory of those 3 tolls, hanging in the air like smoke that won't clear. Then silence again. But it's different now. The room feels off-center. Like something's shifted a few inches to the left. Like time hiccuped. You try to remember, what hour is it? Matins, lauds. Or have you passed into something deeper, some part of the night not marked by clocks, but by intuition? Because medieval time wasn't measured in minutes, it was measured by bells. Historians often debate how precisely monks could keep time in the dark, centuries before pocket watches or smartphones. But the answer was simple. They didn't have to. The bell did the remembering. Some churches used candle clocks, marked with lines that melted away predictably. Others used water clocks, with drops counting the hours. But mostly, they relied on human habits and the unwavering presence of the bell ringer. And in the middle of the night, if a bell tolled without cause, it was a sign of what no one could ever agree. A death, perhaps, not yet known, a soul passing nearby, an angel walking the aisles. You stand slowly now, your limbs groaning with the effort. A few other sleepers stir. The woman near the font looks up at you, dazed, confused. She heard it too. You exchange glances, but no one speaks, as if words might make it too real. You walk toward the transept barefoot, each step echoing faintly on the flagstones. You half expect to see someone by the bell rope, a monk, maybe, a boy. But it's empty. The rope is still. The tower above is silent. No movement, no second chime. You press your fingers to the nearest stone wall, grounding yourself. It's cold, solid, but it feels like it's humming, very faintly, like a pressure building behind silence. You turn slowly, taking in the space. Everything looks the same, but it doesn't feel the same. The saints in the alcove seem quieter, more withdrawn. The air has a thickness now, like a room that's held its breath too long. You walk back to your spot. Lie down again, listen. No more bells. But now, even the building feels uncertain, like time itself has stretched too thin. You wonder, was it real? Did you dream it? Or, perhaps worse, did only you hear it? That's the part that truly unnerves you. Because if the bell rang for you alone, what was it calling? You stare at the ceiling, unable to close your eyes. And then, in the quiet, you remember something from an old folk tale. When bells toll at the wrong hour, it's not time that is broken, it's the veil. You don't know what that means, but you know you won't be sleeping again soon. So you lie there, beneath stone and saints and the weight of centuries, and wait for morning, or something else. At first, you think it's just your ears playing tricks on you. Residual noise, echoes of that phantom bell still bouncing around your skull. But no, there it is again. Footsteps, software scattered, not hurried, not rhythmic, wandering. You stay still, just your eyes moving now, tracking shadows against the faint moonlight streaming through the windows. You'd thought everyone was asleep. The woman near the font, the man near the pillar, the old one who stopped snoring 2 sections ago. But someone's walking, number someone's. The footsteps multiply, a brush of fabric, a foot dragging against stone. You raise your head just an inch, craning to see beyond the pews. There are figures in the shadows now, moving slowly, intentionally, toward the altar, toward the saints, toward something. They're not monks, they're not in robes. No chanting, no bells, no light, but they're here. You feel your heartbeat tick upward, because suddenly the church feels full in a way it hasn't all night. Not warm full, not welcome full, but crowded, like a place with too many people who don't want to be seen. You close your eyes part way, watching, barely breathing. One of the figures passes within 10 feet of you, a man, hooded, limping slightly. Barefoot. He doesn't look down. He doesn't pause. And then another, a child, maybe. Small, thin, pale, holding something in their hands. A bone, a candle, a cloth. You're not sure if they're alive. You're not sure if they're real. Historians rarely write about the people who move through churches at night. Not the monks, not the clergy, but the others. The midnight pilgrims. The desperate, the broken, the ones who came not for God, but for silence. There were travelers who arrived after the doors had closed and slept in corners. Widows who left offerings in secret, hoping a dead husband might hear. Thieves who thought the Virgin might forgive a loaf stolen in hunger. And those who simply walked in because they had nowhere else to go. The church didn't turn them away, because a church that slept was still open, and God never locked his door, at least not to those who truly needed it. But there were rules, unspoken ones. No speaking, no lamps, no interference. You lie there now, very still, heart beating like a distant drum. The figures pass through like ghosts. Their feet sound different, lighter than monks, softer than pilgrims. Like their bodies haven't been real for a long time. They gather near the side chapel, then slowly dissolve. Not like smoke, not like a dream, just gone. You sit up, no one is there. The church is quiet again, still, but you swear the air smells like feet, not the dirty kind, the tired kind, that sour warmth of socks that have walked for days. The faint scent of wet wool, of open fields, of blistered heels. You look down at the floor, dust marks, just a few, leading nowhere. You could brush them away in an instant, but you don't, because something tells you they weren't for you to find. And now you realize something even stranger. You don't feel afraid anymore. just included. As if the church has decided you're ready to see the night shift. The ones who come in silence, the ones who walk between dreams. You lie back down. Let the smell of tired pilgrims fill your lungs. Let the cool stone press against your spine. And if someone else walks past you again tonight, you won't open your eyes. Because you understand now, they're not coming for you. They're just passing through. You're just lucky to have seen them at all. You wake to silence. Real silence. Not the layered kind you have grown used to, the kind made of creaks and snores and the gentle rustle of cloaks in the dark. Number, this is thick, like someone has laid a heavy velvet blanket over the entire world. You sit up slowly, expecting to see the usual shapes of the other sleepers, but they're gone. The woman by the font, the snorer near the pillar, even the faint outline of the monks behind the choir screen. No one. You're alone. At least, it seems that way. But here's the thing. This silence doesn't feel empty. If anything, it feels full. The air hums with it. Charged, dense, pressing gently against your skin. You turn your head toward the high altar, expecting to find an answer, or at least a flicker of movement. Nothing. But still, you feel watched. Not in a sinister way, not like the chill of a predator in the dark. It's more like being noticed by a crowd that doesn't need to make noise to exist. And you remember something you hadn't thought about in years. Medieval churches were never designed to feel empty. They were built to contain stories, prayers, bodies, and something else. Presence. Even when unoccupied, even at their most deserted, churches were believed to hold the residue of faith. Historians still argue about whether this was architectural design or theological belief. Did people feel watched because of the towering columns, the looming saints, the light that filtered in like judgment? Or did they feel it because deep down they thought they were never really alone? You feel it now. The stone arches above you aren't just impressive, they're attentive. The carved saints don't just decorate, they listen. Even the floor beneath you hums faintly, like it's storing the weight of every soul who's ever passed through. And you realize you've entered a kind of sacred echo, a place where every whisper leaves a trace. You stand. Your footsteps barely register, but the sound seems to continue after you stop walking, like the church is replaying them, like it's remembering you. You glance up at the windows. The stained glass is still dark. The moonlight filtered through colored scenes of martyrdom and miracle. You can't see the sky. You don't know how long until dawn, but you know you're not waiting alone. Because even in silence, this place is inhabited by memory, by prayer, by longing. Maybe that's why medieval people felt such comfort in churches. Not because they were peaceful, but because they were populated, even when empty, with saints, with God, with the dead, with hope. You walk toward the side aisle. Each footstep feels like a word in a very old, very slow sentence. And as you walk, you catch something out of the corner of your eye. A shimmer, a movement, a presence. You turn. Nothing. But again, you're not scared. Because it doesn't feel wrong. It just feels present. You press your hand against a cold pillar. You whisper something you can't quite articulate. A thanks. An apology. A prayer, maybe. And for the first time all night, the silence responds. Not in words, not in light, just a feeling. A yes. You return to your cloak. Lie down again, not to sleep, not yet, just to be still and heard and real, in a space that never forgets who passes through it. The floor feels warmer now, Not in a physical sense. You're still lying on cold stone, wrapped in scratchy wool, your breath clouding faintly in the air. But there's a kind of soft heat radiating from somewhere nearby. It pulses gently, like a sleeping heartbeat. You sit up, rubbing your arms against the chill, and glance toward the nearest chapel. And then you see it. Not bright, not dramatic, just glowing. A faint golden shimmer behind a wrought iron gate. A flicker of moonlight. No, not moonlight. It is not flickering. It's steady, constant, almost humming. You pull the cloak tighter and rise, moving carefully across the nave, your bare feet whispering against the stones. As you approach, the glow becomes clearer. It's coming from a small, ornate box behind the altar of a side chapel. Gilded, jeweled, delicate, a reliquary. You stop, because even from here, you feel the weight of it. Not the physical weight, the spiritual gravity. Sleeping near a relic is not something you plan to do, not knowingly anyway. But now that you're here, you can feel it. The hum beneath your ribs, the tingle at the base of your spine, the subtle way the air around this space seems thicker. You didn't grow up with saints. You probably didn't grow up thinking that a fingernail or a tooth or a fragment of cloth could matter this much. But here, now, in this quiet chamber soaked in centuries, it makes perfect sense. Historians still marvel at the power medieval people gave to relics, tiny bones, drops of blood, splinters of the true cross, locks of hair, milk teeth, pieces of the sacred. And people believed deeply that proximity to these fragments could heal, protect, or even transform them. There are records of people traveling hundreds of miles just to sleep near a particular saint's finger. They didn't ask for anything specific. They just wanted to be close. You move nearer now, your breath catching slightly as the relic comes into full view. It's small, hardly larger than your palm, a box within a box, crystal framed in gold. Inside, something that might be a tooth or a sliver of bone or a scrap of cloth soaked in ancient blood. You can't tell, you don't need to, because you feel it. Not magic, not even holiness, just presence. You sit down beside the gate. You don't touch it. That feels wrong somehow, but you let yourself lean against the stone. The glow seems to reach toward you, and you wonder, who does it belong to? A martyr, a bishop, a forgotten nun? Is their soul still tied to it somehow? Do they know you're here? You think back to the stories you've read, or maybe heard, whispered in documentaries with dramatic lighting. A blind woman who slept near St. Cuthbert's staff and woke with sight. A wounded soldier who lay beside the bones of St. Radegund and returned to battle unscarred. A monk who claimed that just being in the same room as St. Thomas Becket's blood made him weep for 3 hours straight, and he'd never cried before in his life. You close your eyes, not to pray, not really, but to feel more clearly. And in the quiet, something moves inside you. It's not dramatic, it's not sudden. It's a kind of softening, like your bones. For just a moment, remember that they too are sacred, that your body is as old as earth, that your breath carries centuries, that even you, modern, sleepless, uncertain you, might be worthy of sharing space with the holy. You stay there a long time, not asleep, not fully awake, half dreaming beside someone else's bones. And somehow, that's enough. It begins with a hum, low, barely audible. You think at first it's just your ears ringing, that strange pressure you sometimes get when you're overtired or too deep in silence. But then it grows, not louder, wider, like a mist rolling in through your ears. You lift your head from the stone beside the relic chapel, and you hear it again. Not a hum, not quite. A voice. No words, just tone. Long, slow, reverent. Then another and another. Different notes, blending, layering. No melody you recognize. Just sound, thick, ancient, alive. It's not a performance. It's a presence in the form of music. You rise slowly, almost afraid to move too suddenly and scare it away. Your footsteps are silent now. Even the floor seems to hush itself. The sound is coming from the choir stalls, that shadowed space beyond the transept, where the monks pray. But you know, no one lit the lamps. No one called for vigil. You never heard a door. You drift toward it, following the sound. It pulls at something inside you. Something old, something still trying to remember what it used to believe in. You step into the crossing, and you see them. Shadows, lined up in the stalls. Not men exactly, but shapes of devotion. Bent heads, clasped hands. Robes that ripple like candlelight, even though no wind stirs. They sing, but their mouths do not move. They glow faintly from within. You do not run, because deep in your gut, you know, these are not ghosts. They are remnants, impressions. The emotional echo of prayer repeated so often, so faithfully, that the space remembers. Historians still debate whether residual hauntings exist, where actions imprint themselves into locations like grooves in stone. But here, in this choir loft, it doesn't feel like a debate. It feels like proof. The monks may be gone. The centuries may have passed, but their voices remain. And tonight, they've chosen to sing. You sit in the back pew, barely breathing, and listen. There are no lyrics you understand. But the meaning comes through anyway. It's not joy. It's not sorrow. It's that strange in-between place where the two collide, where pain becomes holy, where devotion becomes a kind of sleep, the kind of music that doesn't ask for attention. Only permission to keep existing, to keep echoing, to keep being heard. You close your eyes, and for a moment you aren't a modern soul or a traveler or a curious guest. You're just one more note in the chord. You breathe in with the inhale of the chant. You exhale with its end. You become part of the echo. And you understand now. Silence in a church isn't the absence of sound. It's the resonance of everything still singing beneath it. When the chant fades, it does not stop. It simply goes deeper, into the walls, into the floor, into you. You open your eyes. The choir stalls are empty again. No shadows, just architecture and air. But the music remains inside you, like a gentle ache, like something you'll hum in your sleep without knowing why. You return to your space near the altar. Lie down slowly, and this time you're not alone in your head. You're carrying a song centuries long. You drift, not into sleep, but into something close. A kind of waking trance, like floating on your own breath. Your body is still, but your awareness stretches outward, upward, through the bones of the church, and then you realize something that you hadn't considered all night. You're not the only one lying here awake, because beneath you, beside you, around you, something else is still alert. The church, not the people, not the pilgrims, the building itself. You begin to sense it, not as a collection of stones and wood, but as something living, breathing. The wood of the pews creaks, not from cold or age, but like it's exhaling. The stone floor seems warmer now, like it remembers the heat of footsteps long gone. Even the air, once still, now pulses ever so faintly. Like a chest rising and falling, the church is dreaming, not in the way a person dreams, with stories and symbols, but in the way a forest dreams after nightfall, the way oceans remember storms, the way old houses murmur when no one's speaking. Historians rarely speak of buildings as conscious, but in the Middle Ages it was different. Churches weren't just containers for the sacred. They were participants. People described cathedrals as mothers, as guardians, as listeners. There's a 12th century letter from a pilgrim who wrote, "The walls of Shard heard my confession more kindly than the priest who followed." Monks believed that every mass, every chant, every breath of incense entered the stone and remained there, quiet, patient, awake. You feel that now, like the space around you is not watching exactly, but hosting. You are a guest, but you are not alone. The arches overhead seem to bend slightly inward, as if listening. The carvings along the choir stalls tilt imperceptibly toward you. The saints in their alcoves feel less like decorations and more like sentinels. And you wonder, does the church remember everyone who has ever slept within its arms? The widows, the sick, the hopeful, the terrified, maybe even a few like you. Strangers in the wrong century, looking for something they can't name, finding it unexpectedly in stone and shadow. You feel a drop of water touch your cheek. At first, you think it's a leak, but when you look up, the ceiling is dry, no rain, no crack, just a drop. You taste it. Salt. A tear. Not yours. You lie still, and in the silence, you imagine the church crying, not in sorrow, but in relief, that someone is here, that someone is listening, that someone still remembers how to feel small beneath arches built for giants. You place your palm flat against the floor. The stone is warm, not like heat, more like affection. You whisper to it. A name, a memory, a small piece of yourself, and you feel the church receive it. Not to hold, not to possess, just to witness. You've become part of its dream now. You settle again into your makeshift bed, and as your eyes close, you realize you're not sleeping in a church. You're sleeping with it, and neither of you will forget tonight. You wake not to sound, but to absence. The warmth beneath you is gone. The church feels stiller than before. Not quiet in the natural way, but empty, like something has stepped out of the room and left its coat behind. You sit up slowly, rub your eyes. Everything looks the same. But then, there it is, a door. On the far side of the nave, where earlier there had been only a solid wall of dark stone, now stands a narrow wooden door. Closed, unlit, unmarked, and absolutely, definitely not there before. You rise, brushing dust from your cloak. Your feet are bare again. You don't remember taking off your sandals. You walk slowly, carefully, as if the floor might shift beneath you. Each step echoes sharper than it should. Not loud, but precise, like the building is noting your movement. The door is old, iron hinges, wood that's been sanded smooth by 1,000 unseen hands. No handle, just a slight give beneath your fingertips. You hesitate, because here's what you know. Medieval churches weren't just buildings. They were maps, not of cities, not even of the heavens. They were maps of belief, of life, of death, of the in-between. Each chapel, each corridor, each passage hidden behind a column or tucked behind a screen, they all meant something. Historians still argue about the meanings of those spaces. Some believe side chapels were reflections of the body, heart, mind, soul. Others say they marked thresholds between rich and poor, man and divine, outsider and saved. But you're not here to debate. You're here to see where the door leads. So you push it open. It doesn't creak. It sighs, a low, breathy release of air that smells of old incense and older dust. Inside, darkness, a staircase, narrow, curving downward. You pause at the top, not out of fear, out of reverence, because something about this feels sacred. Not holy, not exactly, but ancient. Like this part of the church remembers more than it lets on. You descend slowly, each step carved from stone worn soft by centuries, each footfall more muffled than the last. The air thickens, not unpleasant, just rich, with memory, with time, with the breath of pilgrims who whispered prayers between stairs. You reach the bottom, and the space opens. Not wide, but wide enough. A small room, round, simple, bare stone walls. And in the center, a basin filled with water. Still, clear, reflective. You approach, peer in, and you see yourself, but not just you. Your eyes look the same, but behind them something glows faintly. A shimmer, like candlelight flickering in a mirror. You blink, and in that blink, the reflection changes. Not your face now, others. A woman in linen, a monk with ink-stained fingers, a child holding a toy carved from bone. They appear, one after the other, where your face should be. None of them speak, but they look at you like they know you, not personally, just recognize you as another person who came through this door, who stepped between spaces, who listened when others slept. You lean back, heart thrumming gently. The basin stills again. Your reflection returns, but now your eyes do glow. Just a little. You understand now. The door wasn't built to be opened often. It was built for nights like this. Nights when the church decides to show you its seams. The places where time frays, where memory gets caught like thread in stone. You turn slowly and climb the stairs again. The church is waiting for you, as if it never moved. But the door, gone. Nothing but wall now, smooth, silent. You don't feel betrayed, because the building showed you what it needed to, and now it's closed its eyes again. You lie back down, folding the memory of the staircase gently into your bones. You'll carry it, even if you never speak of it, even if you never quite understand it. Some spaces don't need to be explained. They just need to be entered. You wake to dust, not the kind that floats gently in a sunbeam like lazy glitter. This dust is older, thicker. It hangs in the air like breath you can't quite exhale. You sit up slowly, rubbing your eyes. It's everywhere now. On the floor, on the pews, on your skin. Like someone tipped a great hourglass and let time spill out all over the church. You run a hand along the stone beside you, where once it was cool and clean, now it leaves a fine residue on your fingertips. You bring it closer, smell it. Old linen, ash. Something faintly metallic, like dried blood from a centuries-old wound. It clings not just to things, but to meaning, and you realize you are surrounded by language. Not spoken, not written, but layered into every surface. Because here's what the history books rarely say. Dust is memory. Every speck is a trace of skin, of parchment, of incense burnt during vigil, of whispered prayers mouthed through cracked lips, of crumbs from communion wafers that fell from trembling hands, of ashes from palms that once blessed the poor. Historians spend years deciphering old manuscripts, ancient records, forgotten letters, but the real archive is in the dust. They found traces of pollen from medieval flowers, never drawn in any text. Particles of crushed gemstone, lapis lazuli, embedded in the teeth of nuns who illuminated sacred texts with their breath. One monastery's library dust revealed the remains of a long-extinct fungus once used in ink, visible only under laser light. Here, in this church, the dust speaks without permission. You rise and walk slowly down the central aisle. Each footstep lifts tiny clouds. The air glows faintly around you, like someone has turned up the brightness of the past. You pause at a pew and gently press your thumb into the thickest layer. Beneath it, wood, old, worn smooth. But still holding form, you wonder who sat here last. Not yesterday, not even last century, but truly last, the final person to rest their bones in this exact spot before it was left to stillness and dust. Were they crying, praying, sleeping like you? You brush a bit more away and uncover something carved. A name, maybe. Number A symbol. A cross, shallow and rushed. Almost like it was done in desperation. Or love. You don't know, but you place your palm over it anyway. And in that moment, you feel it. Not a voice. Not a vision. Just a weightless kind of grief. The kind that lingers even when all the mourners have gone home. You inhale deeply. Dust fills your lungs, and something ancient settles behind your ribs. You keep moving. Now each surface is a sentence, each whisper of movement a translation. The altar rail, heavy with wax and soot. The choir stalls, embroidered with fingerprints of generations kneeling in rhythm. The side niches, carved dust drifts in corners where no broom has touched in decades, maybe centuries. And the windows, you hadn't noticed before, but their ledges are coated too. Where once light entered freely, now it's filtered, gently blurred by the soft memory resting on the glass. You sit near one, drawing your finger through the dust like a child tracing letters in fogged glass. You don't write a word, you just make a line, a mark, a joining. Because that's what this is. Not separation from the past, but continuity. You and the woman who carved the cross, the monk who spilled ink, the child who dropped a pebble here centuries ago and was too shy to retrieve it. All of you are now part of the same paragraph. You lie back once more, and the dust, rather than choking, feels like a blanket. It curls softly into your hair, brushes your eyelids, tucks into the folds of your cloak. You're no longer a visitor here. You're part of the archive, and when you breathe out, the church does not flinch. It simply folds your breath into its memory, like one more page, turned and never forgotten. At first, there's just a tickle, high in the nose, sharp, clean, like crushed mint or the snap of a pine branch. Then it shifts, warm, floral, heavy, like honey left too long in the sun. You open your eyes. No one is there, no candles lit, no incense swinging from a thurible in solemn arcs. But the smell is unmistakable. Sanctity. You sit up slowly, your cloak rustling like dry parchment. The air is thick with scent, layered, textured, living. Each breath brings something new. Lavender, frankincense, charred wood, wet stone, rose oil, old wool. You don't know whether you're smelling the walls, the relics, the memory of sacraments long expired, or the saints themselves. Because here's what no one quite tells you. Holiness smells. Not always good, not always sweet, but unmistakably other. Historians have recorded strange accounts of the odor of sanctity, bodies of saints that upon death gave off no smell of decay. Instead, lilies, myrrh, spice. Catherine of Siena's tomb was said to smell like almonds, Francis of Assisi's like violets. Even as their bones turned to dust, the scent remained. Some say it was a trick, perfumed oil, imagination, stories grown fragrant in the telling. But others, quiet pilgrims, skeptical scribes, doctors who opened coffins and dropped their pens. They swore it was real. And tonight so do you? Because the smell is stronger now. Not perfume, not incense. It's closer to skin. But skin bathed in ritual, washed in oil, touched by generations of faith. You rise and walk toward the source, or what you think is the source. It seems to move as you move, never letting you catch it fully, like a dream that turns its head just before you see its face. You reach the apse, a place you've passed a dozen times tonight without pause, but now it pulses, not with light, not with sound, with scent. It smells like something warm from childhood, your grandmother's scarf, old wood polish in a forgotten drawer, pages of a Bible left in sun, sorrow that's been forgiven. You kneel, not because you're told to, but because your knees fold on their own, because the smell demands humility and offers in return something almost like peace. Almost. You close your eyes, and in the dark, you imagine saints standing behind you, not glowing, not hovering, just standing, tired, kind, present. You breathe in, and one scent stands out now, not flower, not spice. Blood, old, iron-rich, holy, not in the violent sense, but in the way that reminds you every saint had a body. Every miracle bled, every sacred person was, once, as breakable as you. And they left that breakability behind, in oils, in veils, in bone, and in scent. You place your hand on the floor, and the stone, slick with centuries of breath, answers. Not with words, with presence. A breath that smells like sorrow, a breeze that smells like ash, a hush that smells like a secret kept safe for far too long. You whisper nothing, just exhale, and in return, the air wraps around you, an anointing without touch. The smell begins to fade, softly, slowly, like a saint stepping backward into a memory. You stay kneeling a while longer, because you don't want to lose the last of it. But even when it's gone, you're not unscented. It lingers in your hair, your cloak, your skin. Tomorrow someone might ask what you've been near. You'll lie, or maybe you'll say, just the church, and let them wonder. Because some scents are not meant to be explained, only carried. You shift slightly, wincing as your hip presses against an uneven spot in the stone floor. You've grown used to discomfort. Tonight's rest isn't about softness. But this feels different. Not just hard, but altered. Like the floor isn't quite as it was when the church was new. You lean over, run your fingers across it. A groove, not accidental, not a crack. A worn path. Long, shallow, unmistakable. And suddenly, your tired brain pieces it together. This isn't wear from cleaning or repair. It's not from carts or furniture. It's from bodies. Pilgrims. So many, over so many years, dragging knees, pressing palms, bending foreheads to the same stone in the same gesture of devotion, until the floor itself surrendered. You exhale. This floor has been prayed into submission. And now, your weight becomes just one more soft pressure in the vast, slow carving of faith. Historians still uncover places like this, where stone is worn into gentle dips and polished hollows, not by tools, but by time. Some cathedral steps are bowed in the center from foot traffic so steady it reshaped them. In Rome, a marble balustrade was found with a strange, repeated dent near the top, until someone realized it matched the exact height and shape of a hand clutching it during the Stations of the Cross. Even stranger, they've found teeth marks in pews, in railings, in relic cases. Not from animals, from people. Pilgrims so overwhelmed by pain or ecstasy, or the sheer proximity to what they believed was holy, that they bit down on stone or wood to ground themselves. Imagine that. You bite the church so you don't float away, and the church, silent and accepting, keeps your mark forever. You scan the floor around you now with fresh eyes. So many marks, scratches, scuffs, divots. Not defacements, devotions. Each one says, I was here. I believed something. I needed something. And I left a piece of myself behind. You lie flat now, spreading yourself across the cold stone, feeling every imperfection. It's like pressing your body to a history book written in flesh and friction. You wonder how many people wept here, not loudly, just silently, into the floor, into the cracks. Tears that slipped into the porous stone and never left. You wonder how many pilgrims crawled, literally crawled, across these aisles in acts of penance or hope. Knees bloodied, hands clasped, eyes closed, mouths whispering promises they could barely keep. You wonder briefly what mark you're leaving, a scuff of your heel, the oil from your palm, the echo of your breath in the dust you stirred. It's not dramatic, but it's there. You sit up again and glance toward the font. Its edges smooth, far too smooth, and you realize someone kissed it. Hundreds did, the same spot, over and over, until the stone rounded like bone. You press your lips to it gently. It tastes of lime scale and longing. You don't belong here, not really, not in this century, not in this narrative, but now you've left your trace. A few skin cells, a breath, a warmth the stone will forget in moments and remember forever. Because the church is not just a place you visit. It's a thing you change, even just a little. And in return, it changes you. It begins with a light, not sunlight, not torchlight, but something in between. Blue, software cold, unnatural, and yet oddly familiar. You blink once, twice. It doesn't go away. The nave is lit now, but not by any candle you can see. The shadows are longer, softer. Time has shifted. This isn't dawn. It's not night either. It's the hour of blue candles. Of course, that's not an official name. But it fits, because everything in the church now glows with a faint bluish halo, like the world has been lightly dusted in ash and frost. And you know, instinctively, that you've entered a space outside of regular hours. You sit up slowly. Your breath clouds just a little. The church is quiet, yes, but alert. Not menacing. Just listening. And this light, it feels like an invitation or a warning. You've heard of this before. Not in books exactly, but in whispers. Old monastic journals speak of it. There is a moment when the night forgets what hour it is and the candles glow blue. A time when prayers offered aloud are caught mid-air and returned unopened. A passing veil through which even saints walk backwards. Historians often dismiss these writings as poetic rambling, but they don't feel poetic now. They feel real. And the candles, yes, now you see them, are real too. Literature, but unmoving. Their flames hover like frozen silk. No flicker, no smoke, just a deep, steady burn of blue. You approach one, reach out foolishly to touch the wax. It's warm, but the wax isn't melting. You pull your hand back, startled, then laugh softly. Of course, nothing melts in the hour of blue candles, because time doesn't flow here. It pools, it holds. A sanctuary within a sanctuary. You walk the aisles slowly. The space feels different, not smaller, but more intimate, like the church has curled in on itself, tucking its edges close. You step toward the altar. Its linen cloth is damp with dew that shouldn't be here. You breathe it in, cool, clean, untouched by incense, and then you hear it. A single chime, not from a bell tower, from within the air, like a tuning fork struck in heaven. You freeze. The candles dim, only slightly, like they're bowing, and the atmosphere thickens. Not heavy, just slow. You glance toward the stained glass windows. They've turned opaque, as if the outside world has been scrubbed away. There's only now, only here, and you and the others, because yes, you're not alone. Figures move at the edge of your vision, not ghosts, not saints, just echoes, pilgrims who also found themselves awake during the hour of blue candles, hundreds of years apart, but drawn here, like magnets toward an unseen pole. You feel them passing, not brushing against you, but folding around you. Like you are pages in the same book. You don't speak, no one does. Words are too slow here. Even thoughts lag behind the pulse of the space. You kneel once more. The stone beneath you hums with the rhythm of unmoving wax. A stillness so profound, it feels like breathing in reverse. And then, as quietly as it came, the blue begins to fade. One candle flickers, then another. The light warms, the air loosens. Time, like water slipping from cupped hands, begins to fall forward again. The church stretches, yawns almost, and you are left kneeling in a place that no longer smells like dew, no longer glows from within, but remembers. Just barely, you rise, changed, not by action, not by knowledge, but by having stood still in a moment when even time dared not move. You brush your fingertips along a now dripping candle. It trembles beneath your touch. It melts. You notice it mid-step. Something soft lands on your wrist. Light as a sigh. Cool as a question. A feather. You pause. Not a quill. Not part of your bedding. Just a feather. Small, pale, delicate. It flutters slightly as your breath moves around it. You glance upward. No birds. No open rafters. No breeze. Just stone and quiet. And yet, here it is. You lift it gently, holding it between two fingers. It trembles like a secret. Then you see another, and another, drifting from above, not falling fast, but hovering, like they're unsure if gravity still applies. White, gray, one with a golden tint. It's snowing feathers. You extend your hand, and one lands in your palm with the same weight as memory. You're not afraid. You should be. But you're not, because this isn't strange. It's symbolic. You've seen paintings, read hagiographies, heard the old stories. Feathers mean presence, not always angels, but always messengers. Monks wrote about feathers appearing in moments of clarity or after desperate prayers. Some said they fell when the veil between the human and divine wore thin. Others said they were responses, answers without words. Historians mostly ignore these records. Too poetic, too dreamy, not enough footnotes. But you're here, and you're catching feathers, and something about that feels truthful. You crouch, brushing the stone floor gently, and find dozens gathered in the cracks. Not fresh, not new, old. They've been here, waiting. You pick one up and it's brittle, aged and yellowing, like a relic from a bird, long vanished. Like a relic from a bird, long vanished. Or a spirit that stopped briefly, centuries ago, and left a piece of itself behind. You sit down, cross-legged, like a child waiting for a story. And the church tells you one, not with sound, with symbols. Because feathers are language here. This one, long, broad, slightly curved, like a wing in motion. That one, tiny, soft, curled inward, like a dream refusing to leave. Some are speckled. One looks burnt. You wonder, were they sent for others? Were they caught by monks, gathered by candlelight, pressed into books that no one ever opened again? Did anyone else sit like you, cupping a handful, wondering if someone, somewhere, was watching? Maybe. Probably. You close your eyes and hold them close to your face. They smell faintly of wax, smoke, and something like rain on stone. And then, just once, you feel it. A breeze. Not strong, just enough to tousle your hair, stir your cloak, raise goosebumps along your arms. It comes from nowhere, but it carries a sound, not quite a voice, just intention, a feeling, and it says, "You've been noticed." You open your eyes. The feathers stop falling. One lands, final and deliberate, on your lap. You do not move it. Some things are meant to stay. You gather the others gently, tucking a few into your satchel, one into your sleeve, one behind your ear. You rise, not because the moment is over, but because it is complete. The sanctuary is still now. The air quiet again. No answers, just a gift, a sign. And somewhere inside you, you begin to hope that the next time someone asks if you've ever experienced something truly divine, you'll remember the night you caught feathers in a church and the world forgot how to be heavy. It starts with a vibration in your chest, not loud, not sudden, just a low, steady resonance, like a thought trying to become sound. Then you hear it, bong, a bell, not far, not near, just everywhere. The sound rolls through the church like warm fog. It doesn't echo, it settles into your bones, into the stone, into the memory of every breath you've taken tonight. You glance toward the tower, but nothing moves. No ropes swinging, no gears turning, no shadows at the belfry window, and yet bong, again, measured, slow, a sound that feels more like a pulse than a chime. You turn in place slowly. Something about it makes you want to stand straighter, not in fear, more like reverence or readiness. The bell is calling, not for worship, not for mass, for you. Which is strange, because bells were never meant to be personal. In the medieval world, they were public, calling monks to prayer, marking time, announcing birth, death, storm, or siege. But this bell knows your name. Even if it never speaks it, historians still debate strange bell records. Some abbeys documented bells that rang on their own before disasters. Lightning striking the chapel, a fire in the kitchens, a monk found cold in his cell. One legend speaks of a bell that only rang when someone was lying. Another, a bell that tolled each time a saint passed through a village unrecognized. Superstition? Probably. But in this moment, the line between folklore and fact feels thinner than paper. Bong. You feel it in your throat now. It vibrates there, soft and slow, like a lullaby turned upside down. You follow it, not toward the tower, but toward the chapter house. You hadn't noticed that door before. A wooden arch, carved with vines and figures too worn to name. It's slightly open, you push. It groans, not in resistance, but in acknowledgement. Inside, stone benches, arranged in a ring. This is where the monks met each morning, read aloud, confessed, chose silence. The space is empty. But the bell sounds louder here, like it's speaking into the circle. You walk to the center and sit and wait. The sound fades, and then something answers. Not a sound, a feeling, a hum, low, circular. It spins around you like a wheel, invisible but certain. You close your eyes and hear it not in your ears, but in your bones. A single word spoken without voice. Stay. Just that. Not worship, not repent, not leave, just stay. And so you do. You sit in the center of a room where decisions were made, where truths were told, where time itself was carved into moments by monks who watched the sky and listened to bells they believed were holy. You don't know what you're deciding or confessing, but you stay. And in the silence after the final bell fades, something soft shifts inside you. Not a transformation, more like a tilt. A reorientation, like the sound helped you remember the direction you've been turning toward. Slowly, all night. You rise, gently. And as you leave the room, you pass a carving you didn't notice before. A small figure with open hands and a mouth just slightly ajar, as if listening, not praying, not shouting, just hearing. You pause and offer a single word back. Still here. Your stomach growls. It's so sudden, so deeply human that you almost laugh aloud. After hours of quiet awe, of feathers and bells and time slipping sideways, here comes a reminder. You're still a body, a hungry one, and you remember something. Faint, like a scent in a dream. Monks used to eat at midnight. Not always, not everywhere, but in certain orders, after vigils or long prayers, they would gather in silence and eat. Not feasts, just bread, a little broth. Maybe dried figs if the day had been merciful. So you follow the hunger, not as a distraction, but as a trail. Because food in this place has never just been sustenance. It's sacrament. You walk into what must have once been the refectory. Long, narrow, stone benches on either side. A single wooden table down the middle, scarred, smooth and solid as time itself. You sit and you notice crumbs, tiny ones, pressed into the cracks, barely visible unless the candlelight hits them just right. You run a finger across the wood. A few rise, dust-like, clinging to your skin, and you wonder, how old are these crumbs? Could they be from the last true meal ever eaten here? Or are they echoes, spiritual leftovers from prayers so intense they manifested into flavor? Because here's a strange truth. Bone dust and breadcrumbs are everywhere in medieval churches. Archaeologists find them tucked into mortar, caught in the fibers of tapestries, trapped under altar stones. They even found, beneath one cathedral's transept, a thin layer of ground animal bone, mixed with flour. Why? To strengthen the plaster. Or maybe as part of a ritual. Some scholars believe monks would mix relic dust, fragments of saints, into communion wafers during times of plague or drought, literally eating the holy to survive. Others say it's symbolic. Still others argue about translation errors. But you're not arguing. You're imagining it. Midnight, a cold bench, a monk tearing warm bread in silence, chewing slowly, knowing that somewhere in the flour and ash might be the ghost of someone sacred. A few crumbs fall, they stay, for centuries. You tear off a bit of the stale roll you brought earlier, forgotten until now in your satchel. It's hard, but edible. You chew slowly, and the moment feels ritualistic. Not because the bread is blessed, but because you are, just for being here. Just for eating in a place that remembers every bite. You reach into your pocket and place one crumb gently on the table, a small offering. Then, without thinking, you whisper, "For the ones who stayed hungry." It's not a prayer, not exactly. More like a thank you. To the monks who waited for bread they baked themselves. To the pilgrims who walked 1,000 miles for a crust of hope. To the forgotten ones who slept in chapels, bones aching, bellies hollow, hearts full. You press your palm to the table and feel warmth. Real or imagined, you're too full to care. Because hunger, real hunger, is not just for food. It's for place, for memory. For the quiet miracle of being fed by something older than yourself. You lean back. Your stomach no longer growls. The church has given you bread, and in return, you've left behind a tiny piece of yourself. Soft, crumbling, sacred. You're not sure what draws you there. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's the gravity of places left undisturbed. Or maybe it's the way the church has been slowly guiding you, not with signs, but with atmosphere. The doors are narrow, half-rotted. You find it behind the sacristy, tucked where two walls meet in a forgotten embrace. There's no lock, just a latch. It opens easily. The air that greets you smells like stone and silence. You step in. A crypt, not grand, not theatrical, just a low, vaulted space. Stone walls beaded with condensation, the kind of place built not to impress, but to endure. You breathe slowly. The air is cold, but not empty. It feels watched, though not by anything hostile. Just the kind of watching that happens when a place is used to being left alone. Your footsteps echo louder here. You walk carefully, as if every sound might wake something ancient. There are no bodies you can see, just low stone platforms, small alcoves, and dust. So much dust. Still you feel them, the ones who chose to be buried beneath this place, not for glory, for proximity, to stay close to the prayers, to sleep beneath the songs. You move to the far wall. Sit. Then lie down, your back pressing against the cool of the crypt floor. It's not uncomfortable, just still, perfectly still. And that's when it happens. You feel the weight of the church settle onto you, not crushing, not painful, but total, like a blanket knit from centuries. A pressure not meant to smother, but to contain. You close your eyes, and the memories rise. Not yours, theirs. A monk, young and scared, reciting psalms in the dark with trembling lips. A noble woman, pale and small, brought here during plague, too young to die, too old to be saved. A grave digger, leaning against the wall after placing the last stone, whispering, "Rest well." You are not haunted. You are held. And for the first time tonight, maybe the first time in longer than you can recall, you feel completely safe, as if the church is saying, "You've seen enough. You've listened. You've touched and tasted and breathed it all in. Now sleep here, where no one does, where no one should, but where someone always must." You smile. It's small, tired. You curl on your side, and just before you slip under, a final thought surfaces. That rest is not the absence of waking. It's the acceptance of stillness. You let yourself fall into it. The stone welcomes your weight. The darkness folds around you like a final hymn. And if anything breathes beside you, it does so softly, in rhythm, as if saying, "You were never alone here." Now dim the lights. Let the candles flicker out one by one. Let the sounds fade until only your heartbeat remains. And picture the church not as a building, but as a breath, drawn in 1,000 years ago, held in patient silence, and finally exhaled through you. Sleep now. You've made it all the way through. You've walked the aisles, felt the dust, heard the bell, tasted the bread, held the feathers, and dared to lie down where no one else would. The church remembers you, even if no one else ever knows. So close your eyes. Let it all slip away. The stone, the silence, the scent, the story, and drift. End of script. Sweet dreams.